Namaskar. Kristi Noem, loyal supporter of Donald Trump, Governor of South Dakota, now the nominee for Department of Homeland Security. Remember that this department was started after the 9/11 attacks to have better coordination between various investigative agencies, also to keep track of cyber terrorism and any other act of terrorism within the country. So it's a very important, critical position, and the Senate hearings of Kristi Noem were quite fiery. A lot of questions were asked, and we're going to share with you a slide deck where she responds to many of the questions that were asked, because the one that is demitting office now as DHS is a real work of art. So I'm going to tell you what are all the things that happened there. So it's important because the security of America and by extension the security of the world probably is going to rest on how Kristi Noem is going to be able to discharge her duties. Here we go. So many questions were asked by GOP Senator Bernie Moreno, and he had criticized the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, under the President Biden for fostering illegal immigrants, mishandling fentanyl trafficking, and allegedly weaponizing resources against US citizens. Now, I think you may have seen the video where I had told you about how 200,000 illegals were being rounded up in the state of New York after New York Mayor Adams had a conversation with Trump following Trump's win. And within a few days, many of them, well, I won't say all 200,000 have been moved out, but a certain number have been not deported, but they have been sent to Canada. Interestingly, we know what they are going to do there. So clearly there is a parallel organization that is running in the United States with some very motivated individuals with deep pockets who want to do something like open borders and don't have any regard for rules. They want to usher in the new world order. And this is where that is headed. Now, what has happened is these people were housed in one of the hotels was Hotel Roosevelt, which is a 5-star hotel. And when they were asked to leave, there was a lot of ruckus. By the way, you know who owns Hotel Roosevelt? Pakistan. So this is a roundabout way of paying money to Pakistan too. So US has done some very questionable things, I'm afraid, in this last 4-year term. People are now beginning to say Biden wasn't even realizing what he was signing off on many of his signatures, bills and provisions and things like that, orders, for example. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas, the current DHS secretary for another 48 hours, he was labeled the worst cabinet member in US history by Senator Moreno and other Republicans. So this guy has a big cloud of suspicion, very, willfully done bad things. That's all I can say. They have done the maximum amount of damage possible to the fabric and the structure of the Republic of United States. And I'm afraid 4 years may not be enough to put it back together and also devise a way that even if the Democrats come back to power, there's no freaking way they can do what they have done in this last 4-year period. My blood boils when I see some of the things that they did. Now, the senators raised a lot of concerns about fentanyl trafficking, violent crimes by illegal immigrants, and insufficient resources on the US border, how Kristi Noem would handle all these things. And she had a really tough time, although I think she stood her ground. Just like Pam Bondi, she was quite assertive in some of her answers. And they were asking some very specific questions that you want to do something, but Trump says, no, you can't do it. What are you going to do then? These are all hypotheticals. After all, at the end of the day, everybody works for Donald Trump, and everybody works for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump works for the country, for the people, us. So it's our will that he's going to implement. So these are all questions. I felt that being senators, these are the mature people in the room. They should be asking tougher questions, like, for example, her record on what she did as governor, and so on and so forth. But there was less of that and more of what there's many hypotheticals, I'm afraid. And Kristi Noem promised to prioritize securing the borders as well as halting hotel accommodations and addressing perceived abuses of the Asylum Seeker app. This has been documented in great detail. Again, it is the NGOs which are doing all these things. In fact, as you are trying to come into United States, they have places they are saying, come here, we will help you with the paperwork. See, illegals have to still register themselves, because they have to get in front of a judge before they can be legalized. And that wait is, I don't know how many years now, it is 5, 6, 7 years. And until then, they are welcome to stay there unless there is a new provision or the new law that Trump passes that will force them all to leave. Like as soon as they are rounded up, they'll be in a holding place and then they'll be sent out. I think that's what is going to happen. A lot of stuff is going to happen in the first 90 days. Trust me, keep following our channel. We'll be there before even the mainstream media picks it up. Now, Moreno reference to a new act called the Laken Riley Act. It is named after a nursing student murdered by an illegal immigrant as a focal point of the debate. In fact, this was voted in, I think, 2 days ago, and 150 odd Democrats voted against illegal immigrants being prosecuted for heinous crimes such as murdering a citizen of the United States inside the United States. See how low US has sunk to. And I would not vote for these 154 Democrats ever. And these are all in the pockets of somebody. You all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Laken Riley was a Georgia nursing student whose body was found in Oconee Forest Park near Lake Herrick. Her death was caused by a blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. She was murdered last year on February 22nd, 2024 by an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. The name is not important, who was sentenced to life without parole. Yet, somehow he had come out of there and he managed to inflict all these things. The thing about it is that this guy, 𝗟𝗏, was apprehended by federal authorities after crossing the border and subsequently released him into the country. So he was in the United States. And then what he did was, initially he stayed at the same Roosevelt Hotel, and then he took a flight to Georgia. And where does he land? He lands up close to 1.6 miles from where this girl was staying. And I think she must have gone running or something like that in a park. This guy goes and kills her. Asphyxiation, that means you strangled her to death. Moreno compared Noem's proposed policies to those of current Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, emphasizing stricter immigration enforcement. Now, there are many criticisms of what Mayorkas did. Like, for example, 400 individuals on the terror watch list have snuck in, 12,000 murderers, 16,000 rapists, and over 600,000 criminal illegal immigrants have been allowed into the country. I mean, these are all on the record. If US bothered to check, they would have found all of them on their records, whether it was in US, FBI, CIA, or Interpol. And yet they are all here now, and they are wreaking havoc. You are noticing how many people have been setting fires to buildings in LA, and many of them are turning out to be illegal immigrants. Who is giving them the wherewithal? And this practice of housing illegal immigrants in luxury hotels, that went on for close to 24 months, I tell you, especially in downtown Manhattan. That place went to dogs. I don't know how the people who are owning these high-rise buildings, very expensive buildings, were taking it. Maybe they were getting paid and they were just closing their nose and not looking at it, hoping that someday they'll be cleared out. I don't know. New York is a royal mess. So is Chicago. So is San Francisco. So is LA. I'm sorry, these are not places worth living anymore. Noem now pledged to prioritize zero tolerance for illegal immigrants with criminal backgrounds or ties to terrorism. Look, once you catch an illegal, there is no time to ask them who have committed crime or not. You catch them, you process them, and send them out of the country. That is the simplest way. I don't want to hear about taking him in front of a judge and this and that. You are illegal. You don't have the rights that legal people do. People, if you legally enter the United States, yes, you have access to a lot of things. Not illegal. You knew what you were doing. I think they should act and not ask questions, in my opinion. Committed to halting practices like flying migrants into the US and housing them in expensive accommodation. So this is an allegation that's doing rounds in social media. There are people who are saying, no, it didn't happen. The allegation is that 700,000 illegals were flown in and then they were housed in expensive accommodation. See, I can understand some of them coming as part of the people who are helping US in Afghanistan. That I can understand. But that's not 700,000. That's not, I don't think so. So there is this allegation doing the round. Many are saying no, the Biden administration did not do it. The others are saying no, they did do it. So the air will get cleared soon on that one. Now, the confirmation hearing, which was chaired by Senator Rand Paul, who's himself a Republican, saw Republicans express urgency for Noem's leadership to DHS. So everybody now is seized with the problem. I expect something by way of an order on day one of Trump assuming office. This is something very, very serious. Now, Moreno emphasized the need for immediate action. This is what I'm saying. Everyone is saying on day one, you have to pass a lot of laws and orders. Everything that the executive can do, they should do it, and basically try and get these people moving out of the country. In fact, many are already leaving the country on their own. There's a place called Eagle Pass in Texas, and you can see people leaving on their own. I have some videos.
Trump has promised to carry out the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. And before those operations begin, some migrants are already choosing to leave the country voluntarily. News Nation's 𝗠𝗤𝗡𝗞 joins us live from San Antonio, Texas this morning with more on this story. Jorge, how many migrants are we actually seeing doing this, leaving voluntarily?
Right now, Marky, it's unclear, but we are starting to see a trend, and this comes as cities across the U.S. and Mexico are now bracing for President-elect's deportation operation. But his hardline messaging on those deportation efforts have some migrants panicking and some even choosing now to self-deport back to their home countries. I spoke with immigration attorney Rolando Vazquez, who tells me that some of the immigrants that he represents that entered under the Biden administration are now choosing to return home, fearing deportation under the incoming administration.
Just as recent as yesterday, they notified me that they're going to depart the country voluntarily, and understanding that, you know, the Trump administration is going to carry through on their promises.
And it's not just Trump's deportation plans that are influenced these decisions. Vazquez says it's also that Mexico is now open to accepting non-Mexican deportees. Mexico's move would impact Cuban and Venezuelan migrants the most, since those countries typically do not accept deportation flights from the U.S., but may from Mexico.
This is causing for many migrants to leave on their own, knowing that they're either going to be deported to their home country or be deported to Mexico. And they obviously, the overwhelming majority of them do not want to be in Mexico.
And my sources in Mexico tell me that it's likely that cartels and smugglers will exploit, kidnap, and extort those newly deported migrants. As of right now, it's unclear if Mexico has a plan to protect those deported migrants, Marky.
Yeah, border's about to change on Monday. At least that's what voters were promised. Jorge Ventura, thank you so much, live from San Antonio this morning.
Thank you, News Nation. So, point here is that Noem needs to be confirmed, and she has her hands full. Somebody else will become the governor of South Dakota after this. The gamut of DHS is vast. It is responsible for border security, cybersecurity, disaster management, and more. It includes customs and border protection, immigration and customs enforcement, Secret Service, FEMA, and other units with a 250,000 personnel and a $100 billion budget. So that is what at stake. I'm hoping that Kristi Noem will be confirmed and that things will start happening from day one. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.